Here's a video that was submitted by Feline Byline. Socialist firebrand Shwama Zawant, I think I'm mispronouncing her name. She's awesome, though. She's the socialist city council member up in Seattle. She calls out fellow Seattle city council members regarding Jeff Bezos. Now, a quick refresher here before we jump into it. Seattle was going to put a modest homeless tax on the people. It was just going to be a modest tax, or not on the people, excuse me, on the biggest businesses in town. It was going to affect 600 businesses. It was going to be a relatively modest tax considering the money they made. What was that tax going to be used for? It was going to be used to help the homeless. It passed city council resoundingly. I think it was about like 5-2 or 7-2 or whatever. And Amazon complained and threatened to pull jobs. So what did Seattle do? They gave Amazon what they wanted, and the mayor went along. Shwama Zawant was not among those that caved, as we knew. And here's what she has to say about it. You guys will be able to hear this.
Councilor Swatch, you have the floor.
Thank you to all my fellow activists, not only for coming today, but also for the months and in many cases years of the organizing and movement building that we have engaged in together.
Yep.
As the Seattle Times reported recently, nearly 23,000 working families in Seattle are extremely rent burdened, meaning they pay more than half their income on rent. And as one of my union sisters said today, who are these people? These are custodial workers, grocery store workers, educators, cafeteria workers, administrative workers. Basically, we're talking about all the working people who go to work every day and make the city run, and without whom this city would come to a standstill within hours.
Yes. Yes.
We know that rent is skyrocketing. The median home price is now well over $750,000.
Jesus.
Real change
That's
was here today in
insane.
City Hall, ringing the gong for hours to indicate our thousands of unsheltered neighbors. Women in Black report that already this year, at least 53 people have died simply because they did not have shelter. The Democratic Party establishment, which controls this city, has presided over this crisis over decades. This is not a crisis that happened in a day or a month or a year. This has been decades in the making. They have let it worsen with no real solutions. And we know, not only from our knowledge of economics, but we know from common sense, from the status quo, that the only solution to address the affordable housing crisis is for the city to build social housing, which is publicly owned, permanently affordable housing. And we also know that it is completely rational, and the only idea to raise revenues is to go to those who have not paid anything close to their fair share.
Yes.
Big business.
Yes.
So in the face of decades of inaction by the elected leaders of the Democratic Party, our movement, composed of ordinary people, renters, housing activists.
Why can't the entire city council just look like that?
Our movement from the
Why can't everybody be like her?
We got organized, and we built the People's Budget Struggle last year, through which we brought 400 people to the public hearing who spoke with one voice. City Council, do your job, tax big business so that we can begin to address the affordable housing crisis. That night, we engaged in peaceful civil disobedience in an overnight occupation of City Hall. It was because of our courage, determination, and our strategies and political clarity that we then finally came to that unanimous vote on May 14th. It was because of our leadership as a movement, not the leadership of the politicians of the Democratic Party.
And
now,
then what
less than
happened?
a month after that unanimous vote, these council members are going to overturn that hard-won victory of our movement. No doubt, there were several council members who worked on this, but I don't think this is in any way an appropriate moment for council members to be patting their own backs about the work they did.
Yeah, damn.
And in fact, in many cases, thousands
This
of
is a
hours of
fireside
work,
chat on
year
steroids,
after year,
baby.
Decade after decade,
Yes.
for some social change. It is their political leadership that leads this way. And now, in lightning speed, with zero accountability to our movement, zero accountability to renters, zero accountability to the majority of the people in this Seattle who are reeling in this acute affordable housing crisis, these council members are set to destroy within a day's time what hundreds of us spent months fighting for. Why? Why are they doing this? What has changed? The reality is, all around the country, there is overwhelming support for making the tax structure more progressive and making big business and the rich pay their fair share. We have actually, throughout this struggle in Seattle, been hearing powerful accounts from working people and the labor movement in many other cities around the country and even in Canada who are inspired by this fight to tax Amazon in Seattle and want to do similar things in their cities. Right after we passed our tax, the mayor of Mountain View, California said, shouldn't we have a Google tax in the cities in the Bay Area? What is different in Seattle? Are we expected to believe that Seattle is somehow now more conservative than the rest of the country on this issue? Of course not. Seattle is more progressive and has had a history of being more progressive than the country at large. What has happened
in their mind,
there has been a tsunami of propaganda from big business, lies and distortion and misinformation. And yes, it is true, it has had a temporary effect on the public opinion. But I have a newsflash for this council. This was never going to be easy. It is no surprise in any way whatsoever that big business has launched a campaign of lies and distortion. This is what they will do. To quote Tim Harris from earlier today, any progressive measure you talk about, you will find big business opposing it. So why is the council stunned that this is happening? This is exactly the kind of onslaught of lies and distortion and misinformation that came at us when we began building the 15 Now campaign. What would history have looked like at this point if the 15 Now movement had said, the big business is opposing us, they're spreading lies, they're impacting public opinion, let's fold our tent and go home? What did we do instead? We built a powerful grassroots movement. We engaged in a citywide door-knocking campaign. We had neighborhood meetings. We had rallies, protest marches, town halls, and we changed public opinion to the point that the vast majority of Seattle and the nation supports $15 an hour. We not only won 15 here, we have now won 15 in many other cities.
Yep.
So
Seattle led that fight.
I don't accept even for a second this idea that we are now forced to repeal because there is onslaught from big business. No, while council members were meeting behind closed doors last week, I wasn't among them, to plan this repeal.
Wow.
What was our movement doing? Our movement was gearing up to begin building that campaign.
You know what that means, right? And we don't have time to watch the full thing. It's 17 minutes long, but what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to tweet the actual link out. Excuse me. I'm going to tweet the actual link out. Wow. What that means is that, well, they were all meeting behind closed doors. She was out with the people. That's the type of person you want to see in leadership. Somebody that stands with the movement and stands with the people. And she's awesome. Shama Zhuan is freaking awesome. That's not news to a lot of us. I mean, I've been familiar with her for a while. I got to meet her in Washington, D.C. at the Draft Burning Conference. She's awesome. But that is what real leadership looks like. That is what everybody who should be in office. I mean, every politician should look like that. That's what every politician should look like and do. What she just did, and what she just said, and what she's about. And I guarantee you, if all city council was like her and had her courage, and actually was standing with the people instead of going into meetings with big business, wouldn't have gotten repealed. It would not have gotten repealed. So good for her. And she's right. Seattle has led the battle on so many issues. No, is Seattle perfect? Far from it. I used to live in Seattle. I have a lot of love for that city. But Seattle, just like a lot of other places, you know, it's you get there and you find out, man, a lot of our laws are not quite as progressive and helpful to poor people as we thought they were. And Seattle's guilty of that too, big time. And so is Southern California, where I live. So is even San Francisco. I mean, and I think that really speaks to the rot of the Democratic establishment. Because, you know, you go to these places and you think this is kind of the progressive utopia in the States, and you find out in a lot of ways it really isn't. In some ways it is, yes, but in many ways it isn't, especially when it comes to economics and class. And that's something Seattle's been guilty of for a while now. And I'm not trying to single out Seattle or badmouth Seattle, because that can be applied to, as Daniel pointed out, Portland too. That applies to Portland. That applies to Los Angeles. That applies to San Francisco. That applies to New York City. So, you know, I'm not trying to single Seattle out. This story just happens to be about Seattle, so we're talking about them. And I love all those cities I mentioned. I love all of them. But, you know, we got to recognize these structural flaws. Because, you know, we're supposed to be some of the examples, right?
Hey guys, thanks for watching. That was a clip from Get Your News On with Ron, the world's first viewer-curated streaming news show. What does that mean? That means I log on to a stream and people tweet me articles over on Twitter at Ron Placone, or they use our Reddit subsection, which is just Get Your News On with Ron over on Reddit. And that's how we build the show. I'm seeing all these articles for the first time. We are literally getting our news on together. Follow me on Twitter at Ron Placone so you can participate. And this show streams live every Tuesday through Friday at 10 a.m. Pacific Standard Time, so please do tune in. If you want to support this show, you can do so over on patreon.com/Ron Placone, where for as low as $1 a month, you get access to exclusive podcasts every week, exclusive videos, free tickets to shows when I'm performing in your town, and more for as low as $1 a month. Please do consider it. Thank you so much for your support. This has been Get Your News On with Ron.